Hey everybody, it's RJ from Osiris Media. My colleagues Jonathan, Matt, and I had the opportunity this past weekend to go up to Cumberland and go to the DelFest. Really awesome time up there. We had a great time, and while we were there, we got the chance to talk to a couple dozen musicians, including the McCourys and Greensky Bluegrass and many others. And we wanted to bring you a sort of compilation of the highlights of all the press conferences that we were able to moderate. So we did 3 press conferences with a bunch of artists, and what we did here is just pull out some of the highlights that we thought you might want to hear. If you're a fan of DelFest, you'll probably enjoy this. If you've never heard of DelFest, I think you'll still enjoy it. DelFest is a great festival. It's every Memorial Day weekend up in Cumberland. Beautiful place. Beautiful setting and lots of great music. So what I'm going to do first is just do a little bit of an introduction and let you know what you'll be hearing. This is the 11th DelFest, and we talked to the artists about sort of where it came from, and started with Del and Ronnie McCoury. So I want to just jump to that, and you'll hear Del and Ronnie talk a little bit about where it came from and how it's evolved. To check out more of what we're up to, go to osirispod.com, and you can see much more about what we're up to. And if you like what you hear, subscribe on this YouTube channel.
Well, I'll tell you, my manager, Stan Strickland, he asked me one day, he said, did you ever think about having a festival, a music festival, you know? And I said, well, I've thought about that all through the years. I mean, I played the very first one in 1966. I missed it one year. The very first one was 1965 in Fincastle, Virginia. That was a bluegrass festival. And then I did play it in 66. And all through the years, you know, I thought that'd be nice if I could have one of those, but I didn't want the headache for one thing, and I really wasn't interested in business, you know, and I know you got to have a business head to run something. I was just interested in playing music, you know. Right. But my manager said, well, you know, you wouldn't have to do all those things. You'd have some help, you know. And so we had worked for Roy Carter out there and Rebecca Sparks out in High Sierra. Several years we had played there. And Stan said, I'll call Roy and have him come to the East Coast here and look for some locations, you know, to do something like that. So Roy, he came and he looked at places all up and down the eastern seaboard, I reckon. I don't know. But anyway, here's where he had us come first and look in Cumberland here. And when I walked on the fairgrounds, I told Roy and Stan, you know, I said, you know, I've played a lot of locations before, and there's none better than this, you know, far as sites, you know, and I said, as far as I'm concerned, we don't have to go to those other places, you know. So that's how we arrived at this place, you know.
Amazing.
I don't know if it really has changed a whole lot in terms of music, because from the very start it was pretty eclectic lineup from the start. I think what's changed is that more people are coming and realizing that we're trying to keep it as family oriented as we can, you know. So you see a lot of children here, a lot more than a lot of festivals that you go to, I think, and I think we're pretty proud of that. But that's a testament to the music here, to the acts, and the way that the festival is run, and I think the way that our family is kind of portrayed, I guess.
Yeah. Another thing that we talked to the artists about at DelFest was what makes DelFest special to you. You know, a lot of these musicians are out on the road almost all the time. They go to tons of festivals, but you could really tell and feel the vibe here was different, and people were excited and happy to be there and happy to kick off the festival season at DelFest. So we asked a few people, you know, what makes DelFest special to you. So what you're going to hear next is some quotes, first from Anders and Paul from Greensky, then from Mandolin Orange, then from John Stickley, then from Casey Cambell, and lastly from Billy Strings. So I hope you enjoy this little compilation of interviews talking about what makes DelFest really special.
I'm going to go with the easy answer and say that Del McCoury makes it special. We've played here several times. We've also been rained out on the main stage and moved to the music hall. I think the first year we played here, I remember we played 3 sets and we got rained out main stage and then it was the year after that big storm. And there was another storm, not quite as big. We went inside and played in the music hall and we played a bunch of bluegrass and like Ronnie sat in and a bunch of heroes. We were very, very excited and honored.
Del is one of the few people that's still alive that played in Bill Monroe's band, and certainly the one who's still doing it the most. And you know, Del. The cool thing about Del, as opposed to anybody else, compared to anybody else, is that he embraces the younger generation of this music. And he's not just faking it, you know, like he likes what we do.
The thing I noticed the most, even just not being here, is the way that like fans and people that attend this festival talk about it and feel about it when referring to it or saying that they're coming, or it just has a real sense of community. And I think people feel like there's a sense of purpose here because of Del and who he is. And so everybody is just excited to be here and they know why.
You know, of all the different types of festivals you play, you're around a lot of different artists and things, and to get to a lineup like this where so many of my own, you know, personal heroes are playing here this weekend, just to be a part of it is a huge honor for me. And it's a beautiful thing. It's our first year here, and it's just been amazing.
You know, instead of a company putting on a festival or a venue putting on a festival, it's like they're looking at it from the musicians or the band's perspective, and so to come here is just so smooth, and there's really no complaints to be had, and so that's really cool, and it's very family friendly, family oriented. I mean, it's very communal. But most importantly, it's a musicians festival.
Right on.
I look up to all these musicians, and it's still crazy to me to even be here right now. It's weird, but I feel really lucky and very grateful. And becoming friends with people that I've looked up to my whole life it's a crazy thing. But that's how I learn. You know, I've learned lessons from Del, lessons from Sam Bush and people like that without, they don't say a word. It's just from watching and checking them out.
And that's you came from a musical family as well, right?
Yeah, I learned from my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's an amazing musician. Same thing, it's just, I'm still doing that. When I was young, I used to just look at my dad's hands and try to make my hands look like his. Like, how does he hold his pick? Okay, well, he's got his 3 fingers kind of hanging out like that. I'm going to try to make my hand look like that when I play guitar. Yesterday, I was kind of watching Brian when we were playing a little bit. Oh, look, my hand looks like this and his looks like that. So I'm still doing it, I'm still just learning and watching and learning. Awesome. I got a long way to go,
Mm-hmm. By the way, I heard Billy and his dad play twin guitars, and you ought to hear that. It's great, man.
Yeah.
Another thing we talked about in all of our press conferences was the evolution of bluegrass. If you're a bluegrass fan, you've seen it change over the years. Different artists get involved, playing a little bit different kind of bluegrass. So we wanted to ask people about that, starting with Greensky. So you'll hear Greensky Bluegrass here, and then Mandolin Orange, John Stickley, and Rising Appalachia talk about the evolution of bluegrass and what that means to them and their music.
When we started playing at open mics and stuff, it was like right when Brother Where Art Thou came out, and everybody talked about how important that was for bluegrass. Just like, and it was in Deliverance, and kind of like people that weren't familiar with the banjo heard it, and maybe it was a little less scary in Brother Where Art Thou. But I remember seeing that same kind of thing happen when Del played Bonnaroo. I thought that was a really important cross-genre festival breach for everybody. And what Anders was talking about him being so cool with like being around all the other genres and not just being exclusive to bluegrass festivals. After that, I saw us playing more rock and roll festivals, always really early in the morning, but Now we get to play later, so that as far as the reach of bluegrass,
Right.
I've watched it go from early in the day to late at night, which is nice.
We always talk about how we go to all these bluegrass festivals, but there's so much more music that is like fringy, like what we do and like what so many of us do that's not strict bluegrass. And Del McCoury Band is one of the only bands that's playing like what we think of as like the definition of bluegrass. And so I think it's just nice that those things can coexist, and that at a festival like DelFest, there's still tons of other stuff. It's sort of the ultimate endorsement of that sort of broad spread.
Yeah.
For a while there, a few years back, I mean, when bluegrass started to get more popular and kind of grow and kind of burst at the seams a little bit as far as branching out in different directions, and more people getting involved and wanting to do different things, it drew a younger crowd. And you know, some of them didn't know who Bill Monroe was, but they loved, you know, that one bluegrass song that Fish played or whatever. And then the Avett Brothers and everything, playing banjo, and just the awareness and the growth of it all. Certain people, you know, in bluegrass and stuff, it kind of resisted that a little bit, you know, Del just seems like one of the people that never did at all. He like welcomed that from the beginning. So it's, I've always like loved him for that. And then like Del doing like Richard Thompson songs and bringing in these amazing different songwriters and doing it in a way that's like extremely still bluegrass credible it's just really well done and super cool.
I think there's sort of a place for tradition keepers, and then there's a place for tradition bending, you know, and genre exploring. And I think even the way we were raised, there's sort of territory between who plays traditional bluegrass, who plays traditional old time, who plays traditional Irish, you know, what fiddle tunes are gonna go where, and you know, that can be a territorial thing. And like you said, some people love it, some people don't, you know. But I think for us, we have really wanted to create a living folk tradition. So that creates a place where there is an accountability and a referencing of old music and old material and old stories, and then there's a way to merge that into contemporary storytelling and contemporary music and influences. And you know, you go a little ways back, and anybody's genre of choice isn't there, you know. I mean, you go a little further back, and all of the styles and all of the mixing and all of the music starts blurring. So we were really excited to bring a performer on stage with us this weekend, Aruna Diarra, who plays the ngoni, which is a West African instrument that is the banjo's predecessor. And so, you know, really understanding the roots of music is much broader than I think any of our categories can make space for. And I hold both ways of playing, I think, have value. I think the tradition keepers are equally really important to the storytelling as the folks that want to merge and blend and create space for all those conversations. So it's good to be here.
One really cool thing that happened this year at DelFest was the first ever Bluegrass Congress. Del sent out invitations to musicians including Ricky Skaggs, David Grisman, Sam Bush, Brian Sutton, Jerry Douglas, and Stuart Duncan, along with Del and his family band. They played a set on Saturday night called the Bluegrass Congress, and we'll end with a tune from that set. But I want to hear you. We wanted you to be able to hear Del and Ronnie talk a little bit about how Bluegrass Congress came together.
Idea brewed out of. We always like to have picking parties in Nashville, you know, and so you call everybody up and they come over and have food and they play music. Yeah. And that's kind of how that idea of this happened, really.
It was. There's some wild picking parties down in Nashville now. I'll tell you. You know those.
Well, yeah, one of these days I'm going to be home when you guys invite me to come out.
There were
Anytime.
Apparently there were parchment invitations sent out for a Bluegrass Congress. Is that true?
Yes, it's true.
And then finally, we want to end with something a little fun. We got to talk with Ketch Secor of the Old Crow Medicine Show about what it's like being on tour with Del and with the McCourys. So we want to end with that. And after you hear Ketch talk about what it's like touring with Del and the McCourys, we'll just send you out with a song from the Bluegrass Congress. So we hope you enjoy this, and thanks for listening. And to check out more of what we're up to, go to osirispod.com, and you can see much more about what we're up to. And if you like what you hear, subscribe on this YouTube channel. Thanks so much.
I'm here because I learned something from you all and from your family that made an indelible impression upon me, and my life was irrevocably altered by it. I learned how to be in a family band that was not related to one another. Because I was around a family band that was kin. And so I tried to operate my band close as kin, because I saw that your organization, well, that's how I wanted to be. I wanted to be in a band. Now, I didn't learn to drive the bus like you do. You're not still driving that bus, are you?
No. 2007, my wife made me quit. Okay. And it's still sitting there in the backyard at home.
But some of those shows that we did all around the country, when we would open for you, I mean, we were just little sponges, and we would just look at what you did and try and imitate it. And, you know, stylistically, we never really played bluegrass music, but we really looked at your organization for the place to be inspired and figure out what we could learn. And so that had so much to do with Gene, you know, seeing Gene be this piece of everything, and you know, this one family member who wasn't performing but was doing everything else, and who was constant, her presence. And you know, I remember buying trading for records, and she always gave me the one that had the little crack in it because she couldn't sell it. Yeah. She had your best interests in mind, whether it was Juanita's for 300 people in Little Rock or the House of Blues in New Orleans or wherever we were. Yeah. Gene was always keeping such a bird dog's view of all things in the Del McCoury band.
You know, she always mothered you guys. You know, she just loved these guys, and she did. She would, she'd think, well, now, maybe they haven't had anything to eat. Maybe I ought to give them something, you know. And I'm sure you guys had plenty to eat, but.
No, she was right. We didn't. And so she brought us crackers and potted meat one time. And, you know, she would stop off at the grocery store and get us stuff, and because we didn't have a writer.
Yeah. Sure. She did. That's true.
And we were driving so many hundreds of miles in our whatever crappy car we were in, following your bus, to make these, you know, long trips that only a bus would make, and that an opening act couldn't afford to unless they were 22 and as hungry as we were.
Yeah.
And as thrilled with the opportunity to be your opening act and watch you work and think about what it could, you know, think about what it is to be. At that point, you'd been in the business like 35 years, or
probably so. Yeah.
Yeah. And now here it is, 50 years, right? Or you've reached the 50-year mark, Del?
I think so. I think I did. Yeah.
Does that mean 1968?
68? Wait a minute. My first record. Yeah, I recorded my first record in '67. It released in '68. Yeah. That's true. But look now, they're members of the Grand Ole Opry, and big members of the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, Tennessee, you know.
Pretty awesome.
James ages robbery. Shut down blast in his chest, left nothing behind. Coming down with morning to his dying bedside. She came to the hospital, there wasn't much left. He was running out of road, he was running out of breath. But he smiled to see her cry. Said I give you my Vincent to ride.
Why they don't have a soul like a Vincent 52. And he reached for her hand and he slipped her the key. Said he don't have any further use for thee. I see angels on every old in leather and chrome. Threw me down from the heaven to carry me home. And he gave me one last kiss and died. Ah, that's the original right there. That's Richard Thompson.